So this week I'm making Viking tongs, not based on any particular find, it's more of a accumulation of elements from various different Viking and Anglo-Saxon tongs. So I'm using 6.5 inches of 25 by 10 I think it is. So I start with the jaws, I'll mark 3 separate points. Over the part, and then over to the power hammer. Set down the first point, and this will be the nib. I'm only actually illustrating one half of the tongs being made. So mark 2 set downs. And set down the nib. As always, give it a good scrub, avoid accumulating scale, and draw a taper down from the start of the nib to the centre point that you've marked off. Now this is a characteristic of early medieval tongs. They quite often had quite over-exaggerated jaws. Not all of them did, but quite a few. Once you've drawn that down to a taper, I'll just clean up the corners, dress them, make them look smart. Round off the nib a bit. And I will set the angle that I want the nib at. This isn't going to be the definitive angle, but just as an indication. So when you've done the first half, do the second half. And again, dress those corners. Don't really want any sharp edges. So with the jaws done, I will separate the jaw from the parent bar. It's just chisel cut and over to the cutting plate and literally just shear it off. And at that stage, just draw down the leftover bit and stick a scarf on the end. Gonna scarf weld some round reins on there. Oh yeah, front part of the tongs. So the next stage will be to take the reins themselves, and for this I'm using 12mm round bar, We've just upset the end to compensate for wastage and overforging as well, which does happen when you're scarf welding. You run the risk of overforging your work trying to blend the weld in. For those of you who've been watching my videos for a while, you'll know that I do like the well blended weld. Both rounds scarfed up, and here's all the elements ready to be welded up. So check out my scarf welding videos, you'll know what I'm doing if you've watched it already. Piling the fire high to extend the neutral layer and pop your metalwork horizontally into the central part, which is the neutral layer. And well, first few taps just to tack them together. Second heat to weld, and the third heat will be to finish welding, start blending in, not drawing out the material. This is all fluxless welding, obviously. This is only mild steel, so no point in messing around with flux. Just get it to section. So at this stage I'll dress what is going to be the hinge plate, which is basically the material that we cut off the 25x10 and literally forge that to a, goodness knows what it's called, extended coffin shape. It does have a name. Is it trapezius? I don't know. Tell me in the comments. Nobody came up for an answer to my question of what do you call a 16 facer knob as opposed to an octagon. But you have the answer to that question. What is that shape? Let me know. I'm going to knock off all the sharp corners, looks a lot smarter. And what I tend to do is just flatten off one side of the reins as well. It helps reduce the amount of flex that they have when you're squeezing them tight. These are just prototype tongs. I've seen many of the originals with round reins. Production versions I'm going to do, I'm possibly going to go for flat stock reins, just because I didn't really like the amount of flex I was left with these. Punch the hole for the rivet. So at this stage I've quenched off the hinge plate and just start bending the jaw back. I could have done this before punching the rivet hole. It would have made my life a little bit easier. So learn from my mistake, do that. Production versions I'm going to do, I'm probably going to make a jig for bending these, and that'll save messing around forming them over the anvil. Another thing is I could have done it over the big, would have left less marks on it. I quite like bending things over the edge of the anvil. I find, for me personally, it gives me a bit more control over what I'm doing. Downside is it can leave marks if you're hitting the metal a bit close to the edge. Those will dress out most of the time if you're gentle. And again, it's different techniques for different blacksmiths. But we have quite a lot of people disagreeing with me. Nah. And that's that. So cool off the jaw side, and I'll put the back end of the reins in the fire, and on that I will draw out a short spike. I'll do this to both reins. On the second rein I do the spike a little bit thinner and shorter. You'll see why in a minute. So literally setting down, you can see that the heel of my hammer is ending exactly with the edge of the anvil. So it's kind of a three-sided set down. And just draw that out square and form it to an octagon, a 16 faceagon, then round, and finish up with a bit of a straighten. I'm doing this last part quite cool because it allows me to planish the metalwork as well. Give the whole thing a bit of a straighten after working it. So this is the second half of the tongs. You can see this is the shorter, thinner spike. I'm just bending it round to form a loop. You'll see what that's for in a minute. Not for suspending your tongs from a hook. It's a bit small for that. Oh yeah, 2 halves ready. So, grabbed a piece of scrap from the scrap bin, and I'm going to turn that into one of them funny shapes again. A parallelogram. The trapezius. No. It's an equal-sided coffin shape. Somebody left a comment on YouTube the other day about how my voice could be more exciting. I can kind of see where you're coming from. But, you got somebody with an exciting voice, pop over and watch Colin Fairs. Centre dotting the work, and I will punch each one of those centre dots. eventually. At this stage I've taken the rein with the loop on the end, and I'll just open that up with my smaller Viking tongs, which I made years ago, and just stick that on one of the end holes. And that is now a very clever device for holding your tongs shut. So I saw that on some Anglo-Saxon tongs, so I figured I'd incorporate it into the design of these ones. So you can see the spike on the other rein will fit into any one of those holes and hold it nice and tight around your stock. So riveting, I cocked this up a little bit because I could have done this cold. I was thinking that I could just drive the rivet in and start upsetting it, but it had other ideas. I should have just driven it in cold and then stuck it over the fire. As it happens, all I did was fit it in and bend it, so I had to bend it back. So stick it over the fire and set it down. I used to make them a little bit loose. These days I tend to do tong rivets quite tight because you can loosen it up afterwards and it saves being left with a bit of rattle. You can see I'm angling my hammer blows to straighten the rivet head, dragging it towards me, and yeah, that's in perfectly straight. It just takes a little bit of hammer control. So there we go, nice and tight. Get some more heat into them and start pulling. And what will happen is it will basically, when the metal's hot, it'll just wear its way into the rivet and loosen everything up. So with these riveted together, the last thing I'll do is get nice heat into the jaws of the tongs and just tap them down so that they meet up in the middle. Because the Vikings early medieval tongs didn't really have the complicated hinge plates that we use these days. They were literally just bypassing each other and were bent to meet up. So, and I actually bent the reins of the tongs as well to make them meet up at the end. At this stage I'm just getting them to match up properly. Oh yeah. Mostly straight. Funny looking things, but the world was a different place back then. So the last thing I'll do is literally give them a clean up on the wire brush. Get any scale off, bring out the shine. There we go. Viking / Anglo-Saxon tongs. Blacksmithing for the purpose of. So I learned quite a lot from making these. Expect a small batch of various sizes soon. So as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.